For millions of viewers, Little House on the Prairie was a weekly refuge, a place of moral clarity, family warmth, and gentle life lessons. Every Wednesday night, families gathered to watch Charles Ingalls strum his fiddle, Caroline tuck in the girls, and Laura chase fireflies across the golden prairie. It felt effortless, natural, like a window into a simpler time. But behind that serene surface was a production machine, driven by one man's relentless vision and his uncompromising demand for perfection. That man was Michael Landon. To audiences, Landon was Pa, kind, patient, always ready with a hug or a wise word. But on set, he was something else entirely. Director, writer, executive producer, and de facto creative dictator of one of television's most beloved shows. And his pursuit of emotional truth, no matter the cost, often meant 16-hour shooting days, rewritten scripts at midnight, and cast members pushed to their limits. This is a story of the price of perfection and the human toll behind the Prairie's peaceful facade. Let's start with the schedule. A standard TV episode in the 1970s was shot in 5 to 6 days. But under Landon's direction, Little House episodes regularly took 7 to 9 days, sometimes longer. Why? Because Landon refused to settle. If a scene didn't feel real, he'd reshoot it. If an actor's tear didn't fall at the right moment, he'd do it again, and again, and again. Child actors were especially affected. Melissa Gilbert, who played Laura, was just 9 years old when the show began. In her memoir, Prairie Tale, she wrote, "Some days I'd be on set from 7 a.m. until 11 p.m. I'd fall asleep between takes, curled up in a corner with my school books. I didn't know any other life." California law at the time strictly limited minors' work hours, no more than 8 hours per day, with mandatory tutoring and rest periods. But on the Little House set, those rules were often bent, if not outright ignored. Studio teachers were present, yes, but when Landon called for just one more take, education took a backseat to emotion, and Landon wasn't being cruel. He genuinely believed that authenticity mattered more than comfort. He wanted viewers to feel Mary's grief when she went blind, to believe Charles's rage when injustice struck Walnut Grove, to cry when Grace lost her doll in the flood, and to him that required total immersion, even from children. But the pressure wasn't just on the kids. Karengrassle, who played Caroline, once described a typical day. We'd rehearse at 8 a.m., shoot from 9 to 6. Then Michael would say, "I have an idea," and we'd rewrite the next day's scenes until midnight. We'd get home at 1 a.m., wake up at 6, and do it all over again. Crew members called it Landon time, a world where the clock didn't matter, only the story. Camera operators, sound technicians, and costume designers all worked marathon shifts, often without overtime. Why? Because no one wanted to disappoint Michael. He paid well, yes, but more than that, he inspired loyalty. People believed in the show's mission, and so they endured. Nowhere was this more evident than in the infamous "The Lord is My Shepherd" episode. Season 2, Episode 16, the one where baby Grace nearly drowns in a flood. Landon insisted on shooting the flood scene on location, in a real river during winter. The water was icy. Melissa Gilbert and the infant playing Grace were soaked for hours. Karengrassle later recalled, "My teeth were chattering so hard I could barely say my lines. But Michael kept saying, 'One more time, it has to feel real.'" They shot that sequence for 3 full days. The final cut lasted 90 seconds. Then there was the emotional toll. Landon demanded raw, unfiltered performances, even from actors who weren't trained for it. Charlotte Stewart, who played schoolteacher Miss Beadle, admitted she often cried real tears during scenes because Landon would whisper directions like, "Think about your mother's funeral. Now say your line." For adult actors, this was challenging but manageable. For children, it was disorienting. Matthew Labiorteau, who joined the show as Albert at age 13, said in a 2018 interview, "Michael would get in your face and say, 'If you don't cry right now, we're not going home.' You'd panic. You'd force it, and then you'd feel guilty for not being real enough. And yet, Despite the exhaustion, the long hours, the emotional manipulation, almost no one quit. Why? Because Landon balanced his intensity with deep personal care. He paid for crew members' medical bills. He gave struggling actors second chances. He hosted cast barbecues at his home. He remembered everyone's birthday. As Victor French, Isaiah Edwards once said, "Michael was a tyrant on set and a saint off it. You hated him at 8 p.m. and loved him by 9. But the cost was real. Melissa Gilbert developed anxiety and an eating disorder by her teens. Karengrassle burned out and reduced her role in later seasons. Even Landon himself suffered. His perfectionism bled into his personal life, contributing to his 3 divorces and reported struggles with anger. In his final years, Landon reflected on this duality. In a 1990 interview, just months before his death, he said, "I wanted Little House to be perfect because the world wasn't. Maybe I asked too much. But I'd do it again because those stories mattered." And in many ways, they did. The emotional depth of Little House, its ability to make viewers weep over a lost doll or a blind girl's courage, came directly from those grueling 16-hour days. From the tears that weren't acting, from the exhaustion that bled into every frame. But we must also ask, at what point does artistic vision become exploitation? California's child labor laws exist for a reason. Emotional authenticity shouldn't require trauma, and childhood, especially on screen, should include joy, not just duty. Today, the industry has changed. Child actors have stricter protections. Mental health is taken seriously. But in the 1970s, on a soundstage in California disguised as Minnesota, a man with a fiddle and a dream pushed everyone, himself included, to the edge, all in the name of love. The irony is heartbreaking. The man who played TV's gentlest father created one of its most demanding sets. And yet, when we watch Little House today, we still feel it, the sincerity, the pain, the hope. It's real. Because it was real. The tears were real. The exhaustion was real. The love, complicated, intense, and imperfect, was real too. So the next time you see Charles Ingalls hug Laura under the prairie sky, remember that moment wasn't just written, it was earned, in 16-hour days, in rewritten scripts, in silent tears between takes. And in the end, maybe that's the truest lesson of all. Nothing worth loving ever comes easy.